said, we're going to go ahead and say thank you for your patience. We had some technical difficulties this morning, but we are up and we are running, and who knows what live theater brings us, am I right? So thank you again for your patience. Today, we are continuing our series on Occupy the Stage, and we are meeting today with the team behind Way Down Here. But first things first, what is Occupy the Stage? Well, it is 48 hours of previously unproduced works done by women and marginalized genders. Its purpose for being 48 hours is that it is like a protest. They are taking up the stage with women's voices, and they won't be silenced. They are claiming what's theirs. They are holding up space. This event is happening from November 6th through the 8th. Now, for Way Down Here. Heather is a freelance director who loves artistic collaboration, community. Oh, I'm getting the note. My audio is a little scratchy. I'm sorry, y'all. Heather is a freelance director who loves artistic collaboration, community building, and the transformative potential of theater. After receiving her MA in dramatic art from UC Santa Barbara, Heather moved to New York, where she co-founded and was co-director of Flying Fig Theater, a company devoted to telling women's stories. Heather is a member of the Lincoln Center Directors Lab and was part of the New Georgia's women's director group, the Roaring Girls. She took a 10-year hiatus from theater to raise her 3 children and to be sure they were hooked on theater themselves. She has a 2 out of 3 success rate. She was most recently based in Vancouver and was the first artistic director of Children's Theater of Richmond. Heather moved to Berkeley in the San Francisco Bay Area just 1 year ago. Emily is a writer, actor, director, and all-around helpful person living in Brooklyn. She has worked with Night Drive, the Public Theater, Shakespeare in the Park, Ars Nova, the Neon Coven, the Horizon Theater, the Tony Awards, Sweet Tea Shakespeare, and on self-produced projects. Originally from Portland, Oregon, she attended Brown University for a degree in playwriting. And now, let's all welcome our guests today, Heather and Emily. Hello and greetings. How are you both doing this morning?
Really good.
Great.
Perfect. Well, I am so happy to have you on the show, and thank you again for your patience while we figure out all of the tech and internet and streaming nonsense that is currently our lives. I want to ask, since we were talking about us living in the internet, where are you both calling from today?
This is Emily. I'm calling in from Brooklyn, New York.
And I'm Heather, calling in from unceded Ohlone territory, colonially known as Berkeley, California.
And I am calling in from Charlotte, North Carolina, originally the land of the Waccamaw people. Wow! So not even any of us in the same state. We are here spanning time and space. I love it so much. Thank you for being here. Let's hop into, how did either of you hear about Occupy the Stage, and what motivated you to be a part of this project?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. I've been working on this play that I submitted for a couple of years now, and at the beginning of quarantine, I went through a phase where I decided I was not working on any writing anymore, and I was through with it. And as we sort of adjusted to this new reality of, virtual theater is where it's going to be for a while, and it's important to work with that and not try to resist it as much as I think I was at the beginning. So I started looking out for a few other opportunities, and with this play particularly, because it does center women's voices so much, and I think women's voices, young women who are frequently not listened to and not taken seriously, I really thought that it fit in well with this festival's message, and thought that it would be a great fit for the festival.
I first heard about Women's Theater Festival actually a couple of years ago when it was live and in the Triangle area. When my longtime collaborator had a play produced as part of that Occupy. This year, the same collaborator sort of introduced me to what WTF was doing virtually in the spring and over the summer. And so I attended the summer conference and festival over the summer. And that's how I found out about this event. And I read many of the plays that were being considered, and this play just spoke to me. Um, Emily and I have talked about it a little bit, even though I am past the point of being a young woman. I live with some young women. I have two teenagers in the house, and so what these characters are going through are kind of real to me in my own life right now, as they were when I was a young person.
So, way down here, would you mind giving our audience either a little like teaser or a theme about what the show is about?
Yeah, definitely. So, Way Down Here is about four students at a Catholic all girls high school. Three of them are very close friends and they're sophomores, and they try to apply to this mysterious and somewhat confusing, I would say, an elite club called the Church Council at school. And the play is about them dealing with this desire to be a part of this club, dealing with each other as they're growing and learning new things about each other, and then also dealing with the president of this elite club that they want to be a part of, who is a senior. So all of them have slightly different relationships with her, and throughout the play they're exploring, what it's like to be 15 years old and feel like everything is the most important thing that's ever happened to you.
And first off, that is a beautiful description. And Heather, what out of all of that really spoke to you and made you want to do this play?
Well, I think that point in your life when you're really transitioning into being an adult is one of the most interesting transitions as a human being, because you're really figuring out your own identity and this play, Emily and I were talking about it, and one thing that is really interesting about it is that you don't ever see or hear any adults or any men, any boys even. One boy is mentioned, there's one conversation with a parent, but it's really only from the perspective of these young women, girls/women. So that transition to me is fascinating.
I think that we all have those stories in our lives of who am I? And who are the people that I want to associate with, whether it's an elite club or the drama club that I don't think, at least in my high school, was not very elite. What was the motivation behind writing a coming of age story and finding yourself? What was that process like, and how did you decide on this topic for a show?
Yeah, so this show is about something that's really, really special to me. I think in part because I did go to a Catholic all girls high school, so the experience of being in a very intense, and I don't necessarily mean intense academically, although I think that was part of my high school experience, but just like being around other young women your age when you're 15 years old is such an intense experience. And it was such a singularly unique experience for me in terms of exploring like religion and sexuality at the same time in these very strange, in a very strange way, because it's like a religious school, but you're surrounded by these people who are all exploring their sexualities. And it's something that Heather and I were talking about recently, actually, is how when you're in this sort of 15, 16-year-old period of your life, it's a time when your friends become more important to you than your family for the first time. And that transition is very it's a big change, right? Your family has been your main support system for your whole life, but you're in this place now where your friends are suddenly more important to you, and they're the ones who know the most about you. But also, it's scary to share things with them. So I was really excited about exploring some of these like liminal spaces between like what is friendship versus romantic love, and where can that feels like such a blurry experience, I think, for young people, because it's such an intense time. And I also was really excited by the idea of a girlhood story. We have so many stories in I think the Western canon, at least in the American canon, that are coming of age as a story of boyhood, and how boyhood and fatherhood are related, and male friendship. And I really wanted to see how that could be different as a girlhood story. So yeah.
I love that phrase, girlhood stories. We need more of those in life, don't we? You also talked about transitions as a girl going into a woman. So let's talk about the transition of this show. I don't want to make assumptions, so I'm going to ask, was this originally written for stage, or was it written to be performed virtually?
It was definitely written for the stage. Yeah, this play has been in the works for a couple of years. So figuring out how it will work virtually, I think, especially this specific play, which is quite intimate at times, and also has some, I think, particular challenges for the Zoom atmosphere. There's some, the play is written to have some projections in it and text messages, and that is all a really exciting challenge to figure out virtually. I also think it's in a way that makes it quite exciting to see on Zoom, because so much of a teenager's life is virtual, even before literally everything that we did was virtual. These girls' cell phones and who they text and who they see on Instagram is a really big part of their experience. And that's very exciting to see, I think, in a virtual space, and challenging to figure out how to do.
So Heather, how are you tackling this challenge?
Well, I've had a couple of ideas, and I've also talked to a couple of colleagues to ask, have you done this before online? Or do you have any other ideas? These are my ideas. Do you think that can work? Do you see a better way? So it's actually been a really fun way to connect. I'm specifically at this moment talking about those pesky text messages, because I really want to show that dialogue. I don't want that dialogue necessarily to be read, because it is visual communication, and with Zoom we have visuals, so I want to achieve it in a visual way. So actually I'm finding it really stimulating and fun to try to do that problem solving, because I think that part of being a director is enjoying or trying to solve problems. And this is a fun little tech problem to try to figure out how to communicate that in an interesting way.
One of the things I absolutely adore about this story is how open you are about asking other people their ideas and really embodying that sense that theater is collaborative. And it takes more than one brain to put a show. We used to say it takes more than one brain to put a show on stage, but I guess to put a show on screen, I guess that's how we adapt the phrase now. Well, we're all speaking in draft anyways, it doesn't matter. But I'm interested to hear kind of, because the show's written as a comedy, so I'm interested to hear how you plan on making things funny, to say this question in the worst possible way, to kind of clean up my mistake. How are you approaching the comedy aspect of this show when a lot of it in my experience, has always been that stage presence, that being able to see the whole body of the person. And if we're in these tiny little squares, what do we do?
Well, I think that this Zoom or virtual live theater is it's an amalgam of film, TV, almost radio, and live theater. It's its own beast. And I think we just we're all still figuring out what the best practices are, right? Things are in 2 weeks, there may be another Zoom update that allows us to do different things. I mean, or we may see a show where audiences participate in a new way, and we incorporate those techniques that other colleagues have figured out. So I think that comedy exists in all of those mediums. Why can't it exist here? The one thing we're really missing is the collective response of an audience. As an actor, it's more silent than film or TV, because you don't even have that crew to kind of get those the response from. But we have rehearsal. We will have rehearsal where the actors will know if I am laughing, if their fellow actors are laughing. And I think it's just trusting it and just having different expectations for this form. So you're not getting that laughter, but when it's funny, it's funny. So I'm sure we'll be able to find some good moments.
That is something I had not considered, is a lot of times we don't know if what we're doing is landing until we have that audience kind of reaffirm for us, oh, okay, they got the joke. Oh no, that epitome of silence and not having that feedback. I feel stressed now. Oh no. And it means you now have to trust your playwright. You have to trust your director more than ever as the performer, because you can't do those ad-libs on the fly and ham it up because you notice that the audience tonight particularly likes this one character or particularly likes this one gag, so you kind of ham it up a little bit more. You don't have any of that to gauge, to adjust to. Sometimes I've had to cut bits a little bit out of my performance, like, okay, let's wrap this up, no one's getting it, let's just continue on. We just don't know anymore unless someone is like scrolling through the chat feature and seeing if people are LOLing at your work. Which, could, at least for this piece, seems like it would be applicable if we're already talking about that visual type of communication versus verbally. I have talked for way too long, so let's go into another question. We talked a little bit explaining what Occupy the Stage is and how your interests were piqued to join it, but kind of going a step further in that conversation, what do you anticipate getting out of Occupy as an artist?
I'd love to take a shot at that question. So I think that's something, I mentioned that I've been working on this play for a while, so it's been through some readings. I've worked on it with a couple of different groups of people, and I, as a playwright, have always found that something that's really exciting and really helpful as a writer is seeing what someone else sees in it. And the versions of this play that I've worked on before, they've all been local to New York. And so it's been a lot of people that I've been very closely involved with. I did a developmental workshop where I was literally like showing up to rehearsal with new pages, seeing how they worked, cutting them, bringing the next ones in. So I was very involved in that process. And what was really exciting to me about Occupy the Stage was getting matched with a group of artists from all over the country who I have no previous relationship, and just seeing what they see in the script. I think as an artist and as someone who's writing something that's still in development, that's such a helpful and an exciting thing to be able to see, like, especially since I think I feel so lucky to have Heather as the director of this show, because she has teenage daughters. So like I have the experience of being a teenager. So I have that sort of internal experience that I can bring to the show, but Heather has that experience and something completely different that I would never have been able to see how that would affect the show if I hadn't been able to work with people from all over the country. And again, like, no one, I think, would choose Zoom theater over live theater, but there is something that's really incredible, I think, about the how Zoom theater and virtual theater is so accessible and breaks down so many barriers for people to be able to participate in theater. We have actors from all over the country. Heather and I are on opposite sides of the country, and we're still able to come together and create something and find something that we all have in common over a piece of art. And I think that's really special.
And how about you, Heather? What transformative type of, I don't know where I was going with that line of questioning, so I'm just going to pass the mic to you.
Well, I think just to answer your earlier question about what does Occupy mean to me, or being part of this, I'm really excited to be part of a lineup of 40 plays. I have never, I've been doing theater a long time and have never been part of a 40 play lineup. That is amazing. There are so many different voices represented in this festival, so many different stories. Of course, probably your average audience member is not going to say, oh, every single play spoke to me, but there is definitely something for everyone, and such strong scripts. I'm just honored to be part of this group, and really excited to do our work as a group, but also super excited to see the other shows and to see what other people are bringing to the table.
One of the fun exercises we did as members of Women's Theater Festival during one of our staff meetings, we said just shout out all of the locations you have read during our script reading phase. And people were saying outrageous things. I don't want to give any spoilers, so I won't say the list. But the locations were jumping from like realistic to completely and absolutely abstract, and it was a wild ride. So just looking at that list alone speaks to the volume and the spectrum of experiences that we're trying to represent with Occupy the Stage. Go to Occupy the Stage is the moral of the story. Heather, you mentioned that you have been directing for a quote-unquote long time. Your phrase, not mine. I don't know. You're what, like 32? You can't have been directing for that long.
32.
Yes. With teenage daughters, 32. It's fine. Don't look at the math. How has your previous stage experience kind of shaped your virtual stage experience? Is it different? Is it similar? Have you not compared them? What's it like?
I think at the core, it's the same, right? We're just trying to tell stories. So how do you tell a joke versus how do you tell, I don't know, an anecdote about your life versus how do you express yourself in theater? I feel like there's commonality in all of those things, and you just are adapting to the medium. So I feel like what I have from being in the business for a long time is I have some confidence. Now, I too have imposter syndrome, like everybody, well, like most people, I would say, but also this awareness that everybody's kind of on the same page. And that's the thing that really excites me about this, is that the gatekeeping is falling away and it's a level playing field. And, I was recently in the room with the virtual room with a super experienced retired actor who I normally probably wouldn't be in the room with. And it was his fourth time on Zoom. And I just loved that. But I said, look, I had never been on Zoom until March. Never, didn't know what it was. So, I'm only like a half step ahead of you as far as, how to mute myself. But I just love it because I feel like everyone can learn from each other, and really just if you come to this process and you've only directed one play in your life, but you may know interesting tech things that somebody like me has never done, has never gone to. I just feel like every day I'm learning about a new platform or a new way to do something, a new way to create a virtual rehearsal schedule. It's awesome. Silver linings.
Absolutely. And I can't say this enough in my own personal life, and then also when I get to speak to all of our lovely audience members. Theater is a collaborative art. Just that bold, italicized, underlined, just put all of the different text formatting on that sentence. So being able to reach out and say, I don't know virtual theater, is a great starting point to do things. And what having Occupy virtually has done is put people like Emily and Heather in a room together. And we're all starting at step 1. Some of us might be at step 1.5. But we're all pretty much new to this and figuring this out together. And one of the favorite things I am discovering about Occupy is playwrights have the option to step back or to step in. So I just kind of want to open the floor to, has Emily as the playwright decided to step into the process and be hands-on, or are you stepping back and saying, do what you will? What is this collaborative relationship between the two of you going to look like?
Yeah, I think that something I was really excited with this opportunity specifically was to be more hands-off than I have been in the past. I sort of mentioned, but like this place, I've been working on this play for a couple of years, and there can be something, we've all been there as an artist, where like you just want to throw it in the fireplace because you're so frustrated with not being able to figure out what to do. And something that's, I think, really exciting is being able to just observe and see, like, okay, what do other people see in this? What are they seeing that I can't even see? Like, what do they connect to in a character that's like a thread that I haven't seen yet? So something that I was telling Heather when we first started talking is that I'm really excited to kind of just like be the gray box in the Zoom rehearsal and like mute myself and turn the camera off just so that I can see, if with no influence from me, like if they had just gotten this script and I wasn't there, what would happen with it? And I think, again, like it's something that's really exciting about Zoom theater is because I kind of do get to get that experience of like, okay, well, if I just sent this script off to a director and she gathered some actors and worked on it, I probably wouldn't be able to observe what that was like, but I get the opportunity to kind of be the fly on the wall in these rehearsals. And also, just because of Zoom, it is so easy to like be the fly on the wall in that rehearsal and sort of gather information that way, but then also pop in whenever I want to and answer any questions or make changes that I want to. I very much think the script is still in progress. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to actually, like, I think, step back from the script for the first time.
Oh, that seems so scary, though.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so
I think also, sorry, if I want to say, one other thing that I think is really exciting is Heather and Occupy the Stage and this group of actors is going to be the first people to look at this play who don't know me and my high school experience, and like who I was sort of as a young person. And when I've shown this script to my friends in college and my friends since graduating, and also my friends in high school, they've been very much like, oh, I get it. Like, I see, like, you know, because they knew my experience in high school. And I'm very excited to see like someone who like who doesn't know those things about me, or doesn't know like my, I guess, specific relationship with like some of the, I would say, like quasi autobiographical events in the play. I think it's just so exciting to get to see like kind of, you know, death of the author a little bit. I'm very excited.
One of the parts of the conversation I want to loop back around to is, oh wait, first of all, Emily, that's so scary too. I just letting your work, letting your work out of your own hands and entrusting it to someone, and then that someone doesn't know the context it was written in. Oh, scary stuff. This is like from a fellow writer. Ooh, scary stuff.
Very scary. But Heather, we've had a few conversations on the phone, and I feel so supported. Like, already I feel so safe and supported through all of this. So thank you, Heather, for being so awesome.
Yes, Heather, creating safe spaces. We love it. The part of the conversation I want to loop back to, so Heather has some teenagers living in her house. If we say it, they might come. Okay, I understand. Okay, mum's the word. My question to you is this. Being a teenager before 2020 looked a lot different than what it does now. Do we plan on addressing that in any way during this reading? Or is this one of those we're sticking to pre-2020 reality?
I feel like, that's such an interesting question. And I haven't really thought that completely through. My first instinct is to kind of keep it the way it was written. And maybe some of the now we're all living in might bubble up under it. Not so much wink, wink, nod, nod to the audience, but it is set in a school. So right there, it's very different from what's happening back there. Because they haven't been in school since March. I mean, in a physical school.
Right.
So that would be a radical change, I feel, in a setting. Not necessarily, I mean, most of what happens in the play could happen 6 feet apart. Emily, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I'm very interested in that question as well. I think, especially because most of quarantine, I would say until quite recently, I've found it truly impossible to write anything or really like do anything creative. I think especially write something though, because so much, there are so many questions of like, what does the world even look like? To what sort of people can you create? Like, is all media now going to be pre-2020 and post-2020? Because the changes that we're living with right now, I think it maybe for a while, at least for me, felt like they were temporary. And I think now I, at least, and I think others are starting to realize that like this is going to be a long-lived reality that's going to fundamentally change how we view art, how we participate in art, and what art is about. And as a writer, that's an extremely intense thing to experience, because it's like, if you're writing a play about a family at dinner, when does that play take place? It used to be able to just be like, oh, it takes place generally now, but that can't be true anymore. Now it's is this a pre-2020 world, or is this is this a pandemic world? And I do think that I mean, this play was created pre 2020, when it was not difficult to be very, very close and intimate. I do think that there are things in the play that deal with distance and also the opposite of distance, of intimacy. But I think what's really interesting to think about is, like, if we are imagining a sort of post 2020 world in this play, the stakes of getting close to someone are so high. And I think that mirrors a lot of, like, the stakes of getting close to someone when you are 15 and having these feelings and questions for the first time. It's just like another layer of intensity that if you're gonna touch someone, or even hug someone, let alone do anything else, that's a huge intimacy to take on, which is very exciting, I think, for this play specifically, because crossing those boundaries in this play is so hard for these characters and so hard for 15-year-olds.
Yeah, can I just add one thing?
Mm-hmm.
To layer on that, the intimacy, the vulnerability, and being closed off, right? Those two things, even just in a physical sense, have all become so much more heightened in our current reality. I love that that it mirrors what's happening when you're 15, when the stakes are like, we held hands, like, yeah. That is huge. It's a huge moment, a huge memory, and a huge, if you think back about previous relationships, the first kiss, with some people, you don't even remember, like, when was the first kiss? Where was the first kiss versus your first kiss, which I think most of us remember clearly.
I like the insert of the word most of us. There's always exceptions to the rule, but that is such a beautiful way to look at it, that what we are experiencing right now, where everything has a risk, where everything has a weight to it, like, physical interaction now means so much more than it has for a lot of us in a very long time. So remembering our 15-year-old selves and how much weight hand-holding was, and how much weight, like, sitting close to a boy for me was such a big thing. Like, our knees are touching. Oh my God. So going back, or remembering our 15-year-old selves nowadays when we are having these engagements with people, that is such a beautiful through line. I love that so much, to the point where I forgot what my next question was going to be. But we are approaching the part of the episode when I want to open up the box of worms and ask the both of you, where do we think our industry is going? What do we forecast the future of theater to look like? And I'm gonna drop that big bombshell, and I'm gonna let you two take it away.
I'll start. Yeah, I think that, sort of like I said before, no one would, I think, choose virtual theater over live theater, but I do think that this step away from the industry that we have all been forced to take has also forced us to look at a lot of things that were already not working about the industry. And I'm hoping that this can be a time where, before we invest money and time and resources into creating building this industry back up, that when we do build it and it truly feels from the ground up again, we have, essentially nothing right now, that we will build it in a way that is more equitable and accessible, and less based on racism and white supremacy, I think, is really important for me.
I just want to echo what Emily said. It really feels like this Phoenix moment, and let's get it. I mean, are we going to come out with a model that is perfect? No. We're humans, but let's come out with a model that's better, right? Let's face what has been going on in American theater since American theater began, and let's make some of those things, let's get rid of those practices because they're not serving us. We may think they're serving us if we're white, if we're male, if we're whatever, if we're straight, if we're cis, but they're not serving us. Why can't we have 40 different voices? So
yeah, I was going to say, I think that's something that's I think really, in terms of where the theater industry is going, is like something that Occupy the Stage is really taking a lead on. Is there were originally, I think, going to be 20 or maybe 24 shows, and we all got an email as writers saying that like there were just so many good plays that we're going to double the number of shows that we have in our festival, and that is a post-pandemic decision. That is something that's like, you know what, everyone has access, or I shouldn't say everyone, most people have access to Zoom. Most people can throw together some rehearsals, and we need to give these people who wouldn't normally have had the resources, the time, the financial ability to put on a reading, and we can give them that shot, and prop up those voices. And I think that's going in a really strong and powerful direction.
It's the opposite of scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
There's a pandemic. Oh, theater, nobody has money. Everybody's unemployed, blah, blah, blah. We're going to double our lineup. It's not a scarcity model. It's the opposite.
And I think it's also, it's creating this sense of, I think I can really speak to this, I think mostly as a writer, but as a writer, you're really looking for those opportunities that's going to like get the person that needs to see your show. And it's really not, I think, as much about like getting your show to a certain theater or a certain space, but you just need to find the person that's going to see your show, that sees something in it and is going to help you develop it. And the thing that people need to do that is for people to see their shows. And I think that's something that's so amazing about this decision that Occupy the Stage made to double the lineup, because that is what people need right now, is they need people to see their work, and to connect with it, and invest their time and money and resources in it. And this is a time that people can have that opportunity.
Okay, so there was so much that you two just covered, and I want to try to hit on as much of it as possible. One of the things that Heather specifically mentioned was gatekeeping and how that is changing now. I just want to kind of yes and that and say, yes, that whole you got to know somebody who knows somebody type of infrastructure no longer applies here, because a lot of these shows, including Occupy, a lot of it is word of mouth. A lot of it is what would be considered like grassroots productions, because you don't have these overly corporate sponsors and you don't have these quote unquote national tours anymore to kind of like bolster your audience numbers. But also that idea of having startup capital for a production doesn't necessarily apply anymore. I mean, you can always argue, well, you need a Zoom account and you need like internet access. Yes, and a lot of those things do cost money, but you're not renting a space anymore. You're not having to pay for security, because a lot of theaters now require that as well. Because before 2020, things were already happening. So a lot of that gatekeeping and that startup cost for artists no longer exists, and we're currently living in this really cool theater post-apocalyptic type of feel where it's like nothing matters and we get to do whatever we want. And theater and Women's Theater Festival said, oh, we can just program 40 shows because we want to? Cool. Let's do it. Because again, who's renting out space? Who's paying by the hour to like have this at some prestigious venue. So I just want to say, yeah, gatekeeping. Let's not do it. Again, italicized, bolded, underlined. Let's cut that. And the other part that Emily touched on regarding not limiting your outreach anymore. That accessibility to all, because we can all sit on our couch with a plate of nachos and watch the show. I find it so intriguing. And my question to you both is, do we see virtual theater continuing because of its benefits as some sort of like co-season matched with in-person productions in the future when things get back to normal? Do we see virtual theater here to stay, or do we think it's going to fade out once we're back in space?
I think that virtual theater is going to stay. I think that we will all be happy when live theater comes back on, but I think especially in the development process of new plays and musicals, we've seen that there is something that's very legitimate about virtual theater, especially in terms of who it can connect you with. Like, you can be doing, developing your new show in your home in Berkeley, California, and get, a New York producer or a Los Angeles producer to come into your Zoom room and see your show. And that's something that has never been possible before. And same thing if you're developing your show at a theater and they, the artistic director of another theater wants to come see your show, they no longer have to invest the time to fly to your city or anything like that. They can just see the reading virtually. And I think that's a very powerful development tool that's actually bringing us all closer together and opening up these doors, because anyone can come see your show for the first time. I don't think it's going to replace live theater. And I think that live theater will emerge from the ashes, and that we'll all be grateful for that. But that virtual theater, especially as a development process, and in that development process, is really valuable.
I would hope that it remains, and I think that it's certainly going to be different, because right now you have theaters throwing, if they're not just stepping back, they're pivoting and throwing their resources at it in a different way. So many theaters are now doing audio dramas, audio plays. So I would hope that it becomes this coexist. Maybe it's the supporting player of what the theater is doing. And then perhaps some theater companies that are emerging specifically, that have come together specifically to do virtual live theater, hopefully they'll just keep doing what they're doing, because I think that it really allows people who are unable to go to theater this chance to see theater. I mean, again, we keep saying you need internet, you need connectivity and a device, but there's so many audience members who are not really audience members because they either have a physical disability that prevents them from being in a theater, or there's so many reasons why it is difficult to be in a theater for certain people. It can be financial. Maybe they just live geographically where it's impossible to get to a theater without it becoming some huge trip. And for those reasons, for that accessibility, that alone, I feel like, is a valid reason for theaters to continue, almost like in an outreach kind of way, that let's reach, there is audience out there that is excited about our content. Why not continue that? Especially when financially, it just feels so much easier to do. Mm-hmm. Right? And especially even, let's say, I know that it's complicated with the unions. I know that that the unions right now are trying to figure out, where does this fall? Is this an equity for actors who belong to one union but not another? That is a complication, the rights. So I know it's not as simple as just we're going to continue streaming online, because the unions are definitely trying to figure out how to serve their members, and as soon as they figure out what their standards are, and those rules are, then producers and people who are making theater obviously making virtual theater are going to need to make sure that we're continuing best practices.
I think now that we are, as an industry, committing a little bit more to virtual theater, it has evolved into the question, what do we do regarding intellectual property?
Mm-hmm.
And what does that look like? Emily has been so nice to let Women's Theater Festival, put on and have a reading of her work. But what about all these playwrights who, they're already published and now we're doing the thing? It's a lot of complicated legality questions now that we're entering into. And I don't know, I just wanted to pick your brains on how do we think that factor plays into the continuation of virtual theater. Because that's a pretty big hindrance. That's a pretty big question mark that no one has given a definitive answer to yet. So how does that change your forecast for virtual theater?
I think it can be very exciting to think about. As a writer, your intellectual property is your main source of income as a writer, is getting your work licensed, and that can be really prohibitive if you're only allowing your work to be licensed, or you only, because of your publishing or because of your legal status, you can only have your work licensed for live theater. But I think it actually represents a much greater potential income because Zoom readings and Zoom theater are so much easier to produce. I know some theaters, I know MTI, I think, is already licensing some of their work for virtual performances, and that's a huge that creates a huge profit for writers, is being able to have more productions. Maybe it means that we add bylines to publication contracts of live performances versus virtual performances. But I think that like all major changes in industries, it's going to be something that we have to explore. But I actually find it quite exciting because I think that virtual theater only creates more opportunities for writers to get paid and get their work seen and produced. And so hopefully that can be a positive for them.
Again, that idea that virtual theater is letting us expand more than it's actually hindering us. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm going to co-sign that sentiment. I think I'll second that. Emily and Heather, I know that you are currently working on Way Down Here for Occupy the Stage. Buy your tickets, they're on sale. But what else are you guys working on? Is there any other projects that you're having in your brains? I'm feeling the question disintegrate as it comes out.
Well, directors, we often have, we rarely would be in the same place with two projects at the same time. Certainly there are times when you're overlapping. One play is ready to open and the other one you're sort of in pre-production. This time, in this new reality, I feel like you can do simultaneous projects a little bit more easily, but my old director brain is still recalibrating to trying to think about two or more projects at the same time. So I actually have various projects in various stages, but it's more of a question of time for me now at this point, and also that brain space. Can I think about how many projects can I think about at the same time without going to the wrong Zoom meeting?
I know at the top of the pandemic, a lot of people, both in and out of the theater industry, were making the point, I feel like I am busier than I've ever been when I was doing like in-person stuff. Do you feel the same way, or has that break, that mandatory break we all had to take, did you use it as an actual break, or are you busier than ever?
I think that at the beginning of the pandemic, I was very much on a break. Recently, things I definitely feel the busier than ever sentiment. I think a lot of that has to do with, at the beginning of the pandemic, I was fortunate enough to qualify for pandemic unemployment assistance. So I did have the ability for the first time to kind of have a free day and just think about art if I wanted to, while stuck at home. A couple of my friends have actually mentioned, this is true for a lot of people in New York, that and for me as well, that being able to qualify for $600 a week was the most money I've ever made in a week before. And I think that's a reality for a lot of artists who are working survival jobs. And the ability to have a paycheck and have free time has created almost like an artist's retreat for a lot of people. It's like you have this time where you don't have to worry about supporting yourself and can just create art. Now that that's no longer available, I have to work all the time, and it's been very busy. And between this show and I'm working on another show as well right now, it has been an insanely busy time. But that's I think that's kind of exciting. Again, sort of like what Heather said, like there would be so few times where an artist is working on two projects concurrently at the same time. But the virtual theater gives us the opportunity to do that.
I think we have gone over so much today regarding Way Down Here, Occupy the Stage, and also just our transition personally and as a group into what the future looks like, because it won't look like the past, period. Underlined, bolded. Thank you so much, both of you, for being on the show and talking about your process and your journey and what you're looking forward to. I'm going to ask if there's anything that you want to plug, shout out, i.e. social media handles or websites. You feel free to do that now, and then I have my closing little blurb.
Cool. I would quickly love to shout out this other show that I'm working on. In addition to buying tickets to see Occupy the Stage, I'm also working with a new North Carolina-based theater, actually, called Sweet Tea Shakespeare. They're doing a collection of restoration audio dramas that I've been a part of. And our show that's upcoming is called The Rover. It's written by Afra Ben, who was the first female playwright to put a show on in England. And that is going to be streaming on November 7th. So you can come see it. It's going to be on YouTube. It's free, and it's a very cool proto-feminist play. It's very cool to think about a female writer in the 1600s. I didn't even know that there were female playwrights in the 1600s. So Sweet Tea Shakespeare, and then also you can find me on Instagram or my website.
I just wanted to, well, first of all, I love that you are working on The Rover. And I am working on a show, and the first scene is set at Afra Ben's funeral.
No way!
Yes, it is.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a new play, but set in the late 17th century, and it's about the wave of female playwrights that came after Afra Ben, who were super active. There was one theater company that in the London season of 12 shows, this company put on 12 shows, and I believe 4 were written by women. And
wow.
that there were more female playwrights produced at the end of the 17th century, the beginning of the 18th century, until like 1980 in England. Crazy statistic. Unfortunately, the show I'm working on, right now, this is a more private, it's not open to the public, but yeah, we can exchange notes about that period.
Yeah, how fun.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you, Keith. Thank you so much for having me here. And thank you, Emily. It's been a really interesting conversation. And I'm super excited to get into the rehearsal room with you.
Me
with
too.
with you in the background.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Keith, so much. And thank you to Occupy the Stage.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Well, this has been Theater's Not Dead. We are here with the creative team behind Way Down Here, which is going to be happening during Occupy the Stage, November 6th through the 8th. Get your tickets. They are available at Eventbrite right now. It's happening. It's a thing. Go do it. Everyone, don't forget to vote. Very important. November 3rd is election day, but early voting, it's a thing. Do that. We are going to have a yay! We're going to be having a very special episode next week as well, where we talk to some of the administration for Occupy the Stage. We're talking to the executive team of Women's Theater Festival about what this event means to them, how this event and this organization has been developing women's stories for quite a significant amount of time now. So I'm very excited for next week. Be sure to subscribe, hit that cute little bell so you get notifications for when we go live. Buy your tickets to Occupy. Follow Heather and Emily on all the great things that they're working on. I think that's everything. So this has been Keyanna Alexander saying, hey y'all, guess what? Theater's not dead.